My name is Ethan Calloway. I'm 34 years old. 2 months ago, I stood in a grand ballroom filled with 180 people. My mother's sorority sisters, business associates, and old family friends, and watched my brother lean into a microphone and say, "At least Ethan found a wife, even if we have no idea what she actually does." The room laughed. My mother smiled. My father winked. My sister-in-law smirked. And my wife, the woman they'd written off as a dreamer for 5 years, calmly set down her fork, rose from her chair, and walked toward the stage. What happened next made my mother's college roommate drop her champagne flute, made my brother go white as chalk, and made my father finally understand why I'd never once asked my family for a single cent. Before I tell you this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy it. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? It started 7 years ago, the autumn I met Simone. I was 27, overworked from back-to-back hospital shifts, and so tired I could barely form sentences. The cafe around the corner from the clinic was packed, but a woman with copper-framed glasses and a notebook full of dense handwriting had an empty seat across from her. "Is this taken?" I asked. She looked up, warm eyes, quiet smile. "Please." We barely exchanged words that first day. She wrote. I drank 2 espressos and stared blankly at my charts. But when I gathered my things to leave, she said, "Same table tomorrow." I came back. So did she. For 3 months we shared that corner. She told me she worked in research. I told her I was a pediatric resident. She never asked about my family's name. I never asked about hers. It was the first time in years someone sat with me who wasn't trying to impress or be impressed, just present. When Simone finally suggested dinner, I said yes before she could finish the question. We dated for 2 years. Long walks, museum Sundays, cooking elaborate meals in her studio apartment. I fell in love with the way she thought, slowly, deeply, like every idea deserved the full weight of her attention. When I proposed, I waited 3 weeks to tell my family. I already knew what was coming. She works in research. My brother Ryan's voice was flat, like I'd announced something mildly unfortunate. "What kind of research?" "The kind that matters," I said. "So, what?" "She's in a lab somewhere." His sigh was theatrical. "Ethan, you're a doctor. I had expectations for you." Simone never pushed me to reveal more about her work. Once I asked why, and she tucked her feet under her on the couch and said, "I don't want your family to admire me for my resume. I want them to like me for who I am." I didn't fully understand then, but I learned quickly that in my family, a person's value was calculated in titles and net worth. So I stopped volunteering information about anyone I loved. The pattern was there the whole time. I just refused to read it. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every summer reunion at the lake house, the same script played out like a tired sitcom. "Ryan, tell them about the acquisition," my mother would say, leaning toward him like a sunflower toward light. 42 million. Can you imagine? Ryan would roll his shoulders, launch into some story about boardroom maneuvering, and the whole table would listen like he was delivering a sermon. Then my mother would turn to me. "And Ethan, still doing the hospital thing?" She said hospital the way someone might say hobby. "Pediatric medicine," I'd say. "We have this one patient, a little boy named Theo, 7 years old, who came in unable to walk last spring. Last month he ran his first race." "That's lovely, dear," my mother would murmur, already distracted by someone across the table. That was sign number 1. Sign number 2 landed harder. The previous spring, I was nominated for an award from the State Medical Board, recognition for pro bono work in rural communities. There was a ceremony. There was a dinner. "Mom, it's the 22nd, 7 p.m. I'd really love for you to be there." My mother checked her planner. "Ryan has a product launch that week, Ethan. We can't be into places at once." She'd attended 11 of Ryan's work events in the past year alone. I stopped counting after that. The week before the ceremony, Ryan pulled me aside at Sunday dinner. "You know Mom's proud of me, right? That doesn't mean she isn't proud of you. It just means your accomplishments are harder to explain at dinner parties." I wanted to say something that would shatter the whole illusion. Instead I smiled and cut my steak. Simone was right beside me. She heard every word. That night, she held my face in her hands and said, Their opinions are not the measure of you. I wanted to believe her. But those quiet, accumulating humiliations, they were only the rehearsal. The anniversary gala was where it all caught fire. The invitation arrived on a Thursday. A text message, not even a card. You're invited to celebrate Gerald and Patricia Calloway's 40th anniversary. Black tie. The Meridian Grand. Ryan received an embossed envelope with a wax seal. He posted it to his Instagram stories. My mother called that afternoon. Ethan, a word about seating. Fine. You and Simone will be at table 16. I pulled up the floor plan on my phone. Table 16 was wedged near the coat check. Mom, that's at the back of the room. Well, the front tables are for the Harrington Group, the investment people, your father's colleagues, guests who matter to the evening. I swallowed the tightening in my chest. Of course. And Ethan, please dress well. There will be notable people. She paused. And perhaps let Simone know this isn't the kind of crowd that discusses pipettes and grant applications. She ended the call before I could answer. That night I sat on the edge of our bed staring at my phone. Simone came in, read my face immediately. They put us near the coat check, didn't they? I nodded. Do you want me to come? Part of me wanted to shield her, to spare her the performance of being assessed and dismissed again. But a different part, the part that had been silent for too long, was exhausted. Yes, I said. I'd really like you there. Simone sat beside me and took my hand. I've been holding back for 5 years because you asked me to, she said. But if they come for you tonight, I won't stay quiet. Her voice was even, but underneath it lived something I hadn't heard quite like that before. Simone. What are you? She met my eyes and held them. I think tonight changes things. I didn't ask what she meant. Maybe I wasn't ready for the answer. The night before the gala I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the future. We talked about a house, maybe children eventually, the life we were building piece by piece. What kind of household would I model? One where you shrink and stay silent when the people who are supposed to love you treat you as an afterthought. One where you smile and absorb the insults and drive home without saying a word. No. So why was I still teaching myself to do exactly that? I thought about the last family vacation. Ryan had announced his company's second funding round. Everyone stood up, glasses raised, the whole table clapping. Then he turned to Simone with a glittering smile. Simone, still doing the research thing. What exactly are you researching? A cure for being underemployed. The table laughed, including my mother. Simone's jaw was a fine, controlled line. She said nothing because I'd asked her not to make things difficult. That night, back at our hotel room, I found her at the window watching the ocean. I'm sorry, I told her. You have nothing to apologize for, she said. But Ethan, I need you to understand this cannot keep going. She was right. To mornings before the gala, I found an email my mother had mistakenly sent to Ryan, forwarded accidentally to me. Make sure Ethan and his wife don't end up in conversation with the Harringtons. Honestly, who knows what she'd say about her little research job. I read it 4 times. Each reading cost something. I understood then that silence was not dignity. It was permission. Permission for them to keep reducing us, keep erasing us. Something had to change. The anniversary gala was going to be that change, one way or another. The Meridian Grand was exactly what my parents loved. Opulent, orchestrated, and engineered to intimidate. Ivory linens, gold-rimmed chandeliers, a string quartet rotating through jazz standards. 180 guests in tailored gowns and pressed dinner jackets. Assembled to celebrate 40 years of Gerald and Patricia Calloway's shared brilliance. Simone and I arrived at 6:45. She wore a deep plum dress she'd owned for 6 years. I wore the same navy suit I wore at my medical board dinner. At the entrance, my mother stood receiving guests like an empress greeting courtiers. She wore sapphires. Actual sapphires. Ethan. She kissed the air beside my cheek. I wasn't sure you'd make it. It's your anniversary, Mom. Of course I came. Her gaze passed over Simone with the detachment of someone clocking a piece of furniture. And you brought her. My wife, yes. She manufactured a smile. Table 16, I believe. We already know. We navigated through the crowd. I felt the side glances, the half whispers. That's the Calloway's other son. The doctor. Yes, married to some kind of researcher apparently. Near the front, Ryan held court in a charcoal jacket and his wife's diamonds catching the light. He spotted me, raised his glass, gave a slow, satisfied nod. Table 16, Simone murmured. Charming. It was worse than the floor plan had suggested. We were pressed between the coat check and a service trolley. Every time staff passed, we had to angle our chairs. As we settled in, a man at the adjacent table turned toward us. Silver-haired, cufflinks, an expression of precise intelligence. I recognized him. Dr. Marshall Foss, head of research partnerships at Apex Biomedical, one of the largest firms in the country. He looked at Simone, frowned slightly, tilted his head. Have we met? He asked her. Simone smiled politely. I don't believe so. Dr. Foss kept looking, then reached for his phone, opened something, squinted between the screen and her face. Before he could speak, the string quartet faded. My father took the stage. Before he could say a word, Ryan appeared at our table. He held his champagne like an accessory. Ethan, you actually came. Why wouldn't I? Oh, no reason. Just, these kinds of evenings are more about celebrating achievement. His gaze slid to Simone. Lovely dress. Vintage. It's mine, she said simply. Right. He smiled. Simone, remind me what you do again. Research. Research. He let it hang like something unpleasant. So like, clinical trials. Data entry. Something along those lines. Birds of a feather. I suppose. He gestured between us, though at least you both have steady work. He sipped his champagne and laughed at his own wit. I felt heat climbing the back of my neck. My hands were very still in my lap. Ryan, I said quietly. Mom's about to speak. Right, right. He straightened his cuffs. Try to look like you're enjoying yourselves. Photographers are floating. He sauntered back toward the front, at ease, comfortable, entirely pleased. Under the table, Simone's hand found mine. Her grip was measured and warm. You okay? She asked. Not really. Want to go? I looked toward my father at the stage, at my mother taking her seat at the head table, at Ryan already positioning for the first camera flash. Not yet. I need to see it through. Simone nodded. She doesn't understand what she's laughing at, she said. That's what I feel saddest about. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. The quartet fell silent. My father approached the microphone. He was comfortable behind glass and podiums, always had been. Thank you all for being here. We're deeply grateful. 180 faces turned toward the stage, dressed up and expectant. And I sat near the coat check holding my wife's hand and telling myself that tonight would be different from every other night. It wasn't. It was worse. 40 years, my father began. 40 years of choosing each other every single morning. Of building a life through markets and downturns and 3 kids and everything in between. Warm applause. My father wrote it easily. I didn't do any of it alone. He gestured to the front table. Patricia, my partner, my North Star, my one true home. My mother pressed a handkerchief to her eyes on cue. And then there's Ryan. His voice climbed. My son, my pride, carrying the family name into a new generation. Founder, builder, everything I hoped for. Ryan dipped his head modestly while cameras flashed from 3 directions. Ryan has exceeded every ceiling we imagine, my father continued. He has my drive, my instincts, and my intolerance for half measures. Laughter. More applause. I said very still. I'm blessed with 2 sons, of course. My heart lifted, like it always did, like I hadn't learned my lesson yet. My father's eyes found me across the room. His smile was measured, professional, the kind he gave to hospital donors. And Ethan, a pause, too long. He's still finding his lane. Scattered laughter. Polite and vaguely pitying. But we believe in him. The way you believe in someone you've mostly given up on. We've offered him opportunities, of course a seat at the company, MBA funding, connections that could actually open doors. But Ethan has always chosen, well, his own path. Sympathetic murmurs rippled through the room. He raised his glass. To family of the people who build you up, even when they can't quite understand you. 180 glasses rose. To family. And there I sat by the coat check while everyone toasted my irrelevance. Simone's hand was no longer in mine. When I looked over, her chair was empty. She was standing. Simone, I whispered. What are you? She didn't answer. She walked. Not rushed, not trembling. Deliberate, each step quiet and certain, toward the stage. Heads turned. Whispers moved through the room like current. Who is that? What's she doing? My father noticed. His smile dimmed. Can I help you? Simone stepped onto the stage. She looked out at the room, investors, old friends, people in expensive clothing who were all strangers to her, and leaned into the microphone. I'd like a moment, if you don't mind. The room went still. My father's confusion hardened into impatience. I'm sorry, who are you exactly? I'm Simone, Ethan's wife, the one you don't know anything about. A few stiff laughs from the crowd. My mother rose from her seat, hand outstretched. This really isn't appropriate. I think it's exactly appropriate, Simone said. Her voice wasn't hurried. Every word landed clean. My father managed a smile for the audience. Simone, we can speak privately after. No. The word was a stone dropped in still water. For 5 years, she continued, I've sat at the back of your holiday tables. I've smiled while your son made jokes about my career. I've watched you dismiss Ethan for choosing medicine over money, for choosing a different path than the one you'd drawn for him. And I've stayed quiet because Ethan asked me to. She looked at me across the room. Her eyes were clear and steady. But I'm done staying quiet. My mother made a brittle sound, half laugh, half shock. This is Ryan cut through the crowd, champagne in hand. This is unbelievable. Who does she think she is? That's actually a wonderful question, Simone said. Thank you, Ryan. She reached into the small clutch she'd carried all evening and removed a folded document, a thick, official. Something I hadn't known was there. What is that? I thought. I hadn't asked. Maybe part of me had been too afraid to know. My name is Simone Ethan Calloway. Dr. Foss made a sound at his table that caught breath, something between recognition and disbelief. And I believe some of you may know my work. The room shifted. My father looked uncertain for the first time all evening. What work? He asked. Simone unfolded the document. Before my father could find his footing, Ryan stepped forward, inserting himself between Simone and the audience. Okay, this is enough. He held out his hand for the microphone like a man accustomed to being obeyed. Ethan, come get your wife. She's making a scene. I'm not finished, Simone said. Yes, you are. Ryan's voice went cool and hard. He turned to the room, playing to the audience now, something he'd always been good at. Here's what's actually happening. My brother married someone who resents this family because she doesn't fit in it. And instead of a quiet conversation, she's turned our parents' anniversary into a personal performance. He smiled. I get it, you feel like you're not recognized. But research assistant or whatever the title is this year, he made a vague gesture. This isn't the moment. Actually, I think, Simone said, it's exactly the moment. It became the moment when your family stood in front of 180 people and told everyone that Ethan has been failing to find his lane. When your father said he's never quite understood about a man who has spent 7 years saving children's lives. She paused. I work in research. You're right about that. I just do a specific kind. She unfolded the document fully. I'm a principal investigator. My lab develops treatments for pediatric autoimmune disorders. Dr. Foss was on his feet. Good God, he said aloud. I know I recognized her. Ryan's smile faltered. What is she talking about? My company, Simone said, is called Ethan Therapeutics. Someone at table 4 gasped. And everything changed. I need to stop for a second. I know you're screaming right now. I was completely silent in that chair, which is its own kind of screaming. If you're as caught up in this as I was living it, hit that like button. It genuinely helps. And I have a question for you. Has your own family ever made you feel like you needed to justify your worth? Tell me in the comments. What happened next? Even I hadn't seen it coming. Back to the ballroom. The name moved through the crowd the way a live wire moves through water. I watched it happen in real time. First confusion, then slow recognition, then something approaching awe. A woman at table 7 pulled up something on her phone and held it toward her husband. His eyes went wide. Dr. Foss was already moving toward the stage. Marshall Foss, Apex Biomedical. He raised his voice enough for the room. Patricia, do you have any idea who this is? My mother looked lost. I hadn't thought. Ethan Therapeutics. Dr. Foss's voice was clear, deliberate. They just published the breakthrough trial results on juvenile lupus. The paper was in the Lancet 6 weeks ago. They're being acquired by Apex for $320 million. The number traveled through the room like a tremor. My brother's face moved through smug, to confused, to something else entirely. That's not, she's not, I assure you, Simone said. I am. My mother gripped my father's arm. Gerald, did you know? Of course I didn't know. He was losing the crowd, and he could feel it. Ethan never told us. You never asked, Simone said. In 5 years, not a single real question about my work, my life, my goals. Not one. She stepped forward. The spotlight found her like it had been waiting. Last year, the National Institutes of Health awarded my lab a 7-figure grant. I've testified before a Senate subcommittee on pediatric disease funding. I've collaborated with researchers on for continence. She looked directly at Ryan. I don't have a fancy title on a business card. But the children whose immune systems are no longer attacking their own bodies, they don't care about business cards either. Dr. Foss stepped closer. I have been trying to reach your team for 8 months. He turned to my father. Gerald, you told me you didn't have any biomedical connections. The opportunity was at your dinner table all along. My father's composure was a crumbling facade. You never bothered to ask. Simone unfolded the document she'd carried all evening. But that isn't why I came up here. She held it so the room could see. Thick paper, a formal letterhead, a red seal. This, she said, is a partnership agreement. A 2-year clinical collaboration between Adime Therapeutics and St. Clement's Children's Hospital, Athens Hospital. Specifically, his ward, the pediatric autoimmune unit. I started the program because of the patients he told me about. Because of Theo, the 7-year-old who couldn't walk last year. Because of the others he comes home and talks about when he thinks the day was too hard to share but shares anyway. I felt something in my chest come loose. Not because of the money. Not because of the title. Because for the first time in years, someone was standing in front of my family and saying, Ethan matters. Your son, Simone continued, shows up every day for children that the system often forgets. He works nights. He takes the hardest cases. He buys supplies when the ward runs short. He changes lives. She looked at my parents. And you called him someone still finding his lane. She shook her head. I built my company alongside Ethan because I saw what he does every day and I wanted to give those children every possible tool. She met my father's eyes. I work in research. I just happen to lead the lab. She held up the document, the Adime Therapeutics seal at the top, her signature at the bottom, St. Clement's name highlighted clearly. This isn't charity, she said. This is an investment in what Ethan does. Because what he does matters. What every doctor who chooses people over profit matters. She stepped back from the microphone and walked toward me. The room parted. I stood without deciding to. My legs were unsteady. When she reached me, she took both my hands. I should have done this sooner, she said quietly. I kept hoping they'd see you. Really see you. Simone, I had no words. I have never been prouder to be your wife. Behind us, my mother's voice was thin and trembling. Ethan, why didn't you tell us? And there it was. The question that contained everything that had always been broken. I turned to face her. My father stood beside her, ashen. Ryan had retreated toward the back of the room, trying to disappear into the tablecloths. Would it have mattered? I asked. Of course it would have. Really. I felt something becoming clear inside me. Not anger, resolution. You've been dismissing me for 34 years. You've made me feel invisible at every dinner, every holiday, every family gathering. You just called my wife someone with a little research job in front of everyone you know. I looked around the room. If Simone's company were actually worth nothing, if she really were a lab assistant making $30,000 a year, would that make your behavior acceptable? My mother opened her mouth, closed it. That's what I thought. Simone's hand pressed against mine, steady, present, not speaking for me. This was mine to say. My father stepped forward, his jaw recovering before the rest of him. Simone, this is extraordinary. The things you're working on, we should talk. There's a foundation, some ideas about philanthropy. Perhaps we could know. The word fell without drama. But the opportunity was 5 years ago, Simone said calmly. When you could have treated your son with basic decency. When you could have asked me a single real question instead of placing me at the back of the room and hoping I'd stay invisible. My father went to speak again. You seated us next to the coat check. That was a logistical view forwarded an email telling Ryan to keep us away from the Harrington group because you didn't know what she'd say about her little research job. My mother's color drained. How did you? I showed Simone when it arrived. I told Marcus. I looked at Simone. I told her, I said, because I was done pretending I hadn't seen it. For the first time in memory, my parents had no prepared response. No redirect. No gracious recovery. Just the bare fact of what they'd done. We can start again, my mother said. Family is family. Is it? I stepped forward. Because you've spent my entire life making me feel like a footnote in your family's story. Like I was a pleasant footnote at best. Ethan, that isn't you said. Simone was nobody worth knowing. The truth is you never tried to know her. Never tried to know me, and not the real version. Only the version you hoped I'd become. Ryan stepped forward from somewhere in the crowd, voice careful now. We couldn't have known. How were we supposed to? You weren't supposed to know our accomplishments, Simone said. You were supposed to be kind. Kindness doesn't require a CV. The room was motionless. 180 people watching. My father looked at his guests, at 30 years of reputation, at the people who would be discussing this drive home tonight. Let's take this somewhere private, he said, controlled tight. No, I moved toward the stage. Simone walked with me, her hand at the small of my back. When I reached the microphone, I looked out at the crowd, every person my parents had spent decades trying to impress. I was done performing for them. My name is Ethan Calloway, I said. The son who chose his own lane. A quiet ripple in the room. For 34 years, I tried to earn a place at the front table of my own family. I became a doctor and it wasn't enough. I married a remarkable woman and they called her unremarkable. I showed up to every event, every dinner, every milestone, and they seated me by the coat check. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Tonight you found out my wife is, by your definition of success, extraordinary. Famous in her field, wealthy, influential. I looked at my parents. But here's what I need you to understand. That shouldn't change anything. The way you treated us was wrong before tonight's revelation. And the fact that you're only paying attention now that there are $300 million and a Senate record in the conversation tells me everything I ever doubted about whether anything had changed. My mother was crying. Real tears. This time I could tell by the way she wasn't performing them. Ethan, please. I'm not done. She went still. I have a job that fills me. A wife who sees me. A life I built from the ground up without a single check from this family. I took a breath. And from now on, respect is the floor. Not a gift. Not conditional on who my wife is or what her company is worth. Just the basic respect that should have been there from the beginning. I looked at all three of them. Ryan, my mother, my father. If you can give me that, we can try again. If you can't, I took Simone's hand. Then tonight is a good ending. We turned and walked out. 180 people watched us go. We didn't speak until we were in the car. I drove. Simone sat in the passenger seat, head resting against the window, watching the streetlights slide past. Are you okay? I finally asked. I don't know, she said. I feel like I've been underwater for 5 years and I just broke the surface. That's not drowning, I said. That's breathing. She laughed with soft, jagged sound. My phone was vibrating continuously. I finally checked it at the next red light. 19 missed calls. 11 from my mother. 5 from my father. 3 from Ryan. I played the first voicemail. Ethan, please. We need to speak. This was a terrible misunderstanding and I deleted it. Misunderstanding. Like they'd accidentally set us in the wrong zip code. My father's message was precise. Simone's work is extraordinary. I'd love to discuss how the family could be involved. I deleted that one too. Ryan's text came in as a message, not a call. I read it aloud to Simone. I can't believe you staged this at Mom and Dad's anniversary. That was cruel and embarrassing. You owe them an apology. Simone stared at it for a moment. He thinks we ambushed them. He thinks being honest is an attack. Of course he does. I turned my phone face down on the console. He's never had to be honest about anything uncomfortable in his life. We drove in silence for a while. The city unwound around us. Do you regret it? I asked. Staying quiet so long. Parts of it, she said. But I did it for you, because you weren't ready. I know. And tonight. She looked out the window. Tonight I said what needed to be said. We'll see what they do with it. The fallout arrived the following morning. Dr. Foss called Simone at 7:45. I listened from the doorway while making coffee. I want to apologize for the family situation, he said. That was genuinely difficult to witness. I appreciate that. Simone's voice was measured. I've been trying to make contact for 8 months, he continued. I kept going through your father-in-law, assuming he might know someone at your lab. Turns out the connection was at his own dinner table. He paused. I'd like to revisit the acquisition timeline if you're open to it. After the call, Simone looked at me over her mug. Your father had a prior claim to a stake in the acquisition conversation. He withdrew himself from it this morning, actually. Sent a message before we woke up. I should have felt satisfied. I didn't, but I didn't feel guilty either. Within a week, the story was moving through hospital and research circles the way stories like this always do. The family who'd publicly dismissed their son and his wife at a black tie event, only to discover the wife was the researcher behind the most significant pediatric immunology paper of the year. The optics were not kind. 2 of my father's charity board seats faced quiet pressure to step back. His reputation as a man of good judgment had taken a visible crack. Ryan's company lost a co-investor who cited a concern about cultural character and family decision-making. He blamed me in a series of texts I did not respond to. My sister-in-law sent a long and interesting message explaining that I'd embarrassed myself and everyone else. I read it twice, then closed my phone. The most unexpected call came 8 days later from my father's older sister, Aunt Rosalind, the one who'd spent 30 years as a social worker. The one my father called the family idealist when he was being polite, and the family disappointment when he wasn't. She'd quietly inherited that title before I took it from her. Ethan, her voice was like wormwood. I've been following what happened at the gala. I told you what I thought. She exhaled. I've been watching your father pull this with you for years. And I never said anything, and I'm ashamed of that. You have. Every Christmas. Every summer. Every time he made some offhand comment about you needing a more impressive career. Aunt Rosalind sighed. He never listens to me. But I should have said something to you. I thought about all those family gatherings, Aunt Rosalind quiet in the corner while my father held the room. Why didn't you? I asked. I didn't want to plant a seed that would hurt you if it couldn't grow. She paused. But what Simone did standing up for you like that, it was something. It really was. And what you did at the end, speaking for yourself, that was something else. I started to cry then. Not from sadness. From something loosening in my chest that had been wound tight for a very long time. I'm proud of you, she said. I've always been proud of you. I just should have said it louder. And sooner. Thank you, I managed. And Ethan, a family is the people who show up for you honestly. That's the whole list. Simone showed up. So did you. For yourself. After we hung up, Simone found me at the kitchen table still composing myself. Good tears? She asked. The best kind. She sat down and covered my hands with hers. Quick check-in. Are you team Ethan should forgive his family, or team they need to earn it first? Drop your answer in the comments. Honestly, I want to know. And if you've made it this far, you're clearly invested. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. The ending has one more turn. 3 weeks later, I agreed to meet my parents for coffee. Neutral ground. A place near the hospital, public enough that it required everyone to behave like adults. They were there when I arrived. My father was in a regular jacket, no tie. My mother held her cup with both hands like she needed something to hold. They looked older than I remembered, or maybe I was finally seeing them at their actual size. Thank you for meeting us, my father said. His voice had lost its customary command. Thank you for respecting the location, I said. An uncomfortable pause. Ethan, my mother started. We want to do this differently. Differently requires knowing what went wrong. Another pause. They exchanged a look. The private language of 40 years together. We were hard on you, my father said. Because we wanted you to have what we worked for. No, I kept my voice steady. You were hard on me because I didn't perform the version of success you respected. There's a real difference. My mother's eyes filled. We only wanted you to be secure. I am secure. I have been secure. Just not in the currency you count in. She tried to speak. You called my wife nobody worth knowing, in front of 180 people. You put us at the back of the room because you were embarrassed we'd talk to your important guests. You forwarded an email saying so. She had no answer for that. I'm not asking for apologies, I said. Words don't cost anything. I'm asking for something harder. Actual change. What would that look like? My father asked. He seemed genuinely uncertain, maybe for the first time. Basic respect. Real questions. Actual interest in my life because it's mine, not because it happens to intersect with someone useful to you. I looked at both of them. I'll give you the chance. But it's conditional. Respect first. Permanently. My mother nodded. My father cleared his throat and said, we can do that. We'll try. That was the best I was going to get. And I knew it. That night, Simone and I sat on our little balcony with a bottle of wine and a city that glittered below us like scattered glass. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it honestly. Like I've finally put down something I didn't realize I'd been carrying for 2/3 of my life. She leaned into me. Any regrets? Only that I kept waiting for them to see me before I let myself be seen. I put my arm around her. You know what's strange? I said. I spent so many years needing their approval to feel like I was enough. And now I just feel like I actually am. She looked up at me. You have spent 7 years saving children's lives, she said. You changed Theo's life. You changed dozens of lives. That was never in question except in the room where it should have been obvious. I know. And for the first time, I didn't just intellectually know it. I felt it. We sat in the quiet for a while. The city hummed below us. What happens next? Simone asked. I smiled. We keep building. The hospital program. The life. Whatever comes together. Always together. I thought about my patients. About Theo, running for the first time last month. About the children who would eventually benefit from Simone's research. About the life we built on our own terms. I thought about my parents. Maybe they would change. Maybe they would try and fall short. Maybe they would surprise me. But I was done waiting to find out before I decided I was worth something. The people who love you don't make you audition for it. Simone had shown me that. And now I was finally, actually, learning it for myself. You know what? I said. What? I smiled at her, really smiled, the kind that comes from somewhere underneath everything. I think we're going to be fine. And for the first time in 34 years, I didn't say it to reassure either of us. I said it because it was simply true. And that's my story. Thank you for staying until the end. If this reached something in you, if you've ever felt like a footnote in a room that was supposed to celebrate you, I hope you know your worth was never really up for debate. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and check out another story in the description below. I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my place? See you in the next one.